quiet, hopefully. Um, but thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Um, as you probably noticed from the introduction, I'm not a botanist or anything of the sort. Um, but last year in January, February, the New York Botanical Garden was offering this course titled Pressing Plants for Art and Science. And I had in mind an art project that I wanted to do in association with some poems that I was translating. They were very, landscape, very landscape-centered poems. And so I had this idea, I'm just going to go and learn how to really do this properly. And so that's what I did. So you can see behind me some of the things that I did at the New York Botanical Garden. And today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what it is that I learned from the two presenters at the garden. So it was Daniel Atha and Shiranza Ali were the two instructors. And I know Shiranza is the head of specimen preparation at the garden. So she was just very, very lovely and very informative about the way that these plants are pressed and presented and maintained for scientific research. And one of the things that she said that I really loved was that the most beautiful specimen is, so the most beautiful and artful specimen is the most scientifically useful specimen. So, everything that she taught us was really to kind of make all of the botanical features of the plant, or as many as possible, easy to observe in the presentation. So I'm going to show you one of them that we did, just so you can see the elements. Okay, so this is, these Hypericum berries. So you have, of course, the specimen that's been pressed flat and dried. And you can see that we've arranged it so that you can, see the berries. You can see both sides of the leaves, so like the front side, but also you can see the back sides of the leaves. Each specimen, when you do it, for scientific, preservation and research, you have a label. So the label is very specifically done. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that because, as I said, I'm not a botanist or a taxonomist. But we spent some time just talking about all of the pieces of information that go on the label. So I'll kind of talk about that a little bit. But if you want to know about the formatting, you'll have to ask somebody else. And then the other element is this little packet. And the packet is for little pieces of the specimen that may have fallen off while you were preserving it, or just little pieces that were kind of extra, like things that were gathered like seeds or something. So it's kind of glued on there so that you can kind of unfold it. Let me show you how you do this. So you can kind of, and then you would just store any like loose pieces inside there. So that is that. And of course, for those of us who are poets, this is really the kinds of, these are the kinds of things that I've done since, just, like little note cards. I've done, just pretty things to glue on, things like phone cases and things like that. So you can be very creative with this art form. Okay, so I think the presentation I'm going to give is will be kind of 3 parts. The first part is the pressing itself, like using the plant press, and then the second part would be kind of talking a little bit about the labeling, kind of what information you want as you're observing and getting set to press. There's the gluing on the paper, the herbarium card, which is like a very delicate process. And then there's the sewing. So if you could see, sometimes with these very woody stems, you have to sew kind of, you can see there's like a little bit of thread that we use just to secure the specimen to the card. And you would do that, you know, if you have like a really big specimen with like, you know, cones or like seeds that are kind of threatening to come off, then you would kind of carefully sew those on as well. So I'll show you all of those things. Okay, so what we're going to start with is the pressing, just because, you know, that's really the best way to get a sense of what this is all about. So on the materials sheet, you know, of course you need a plant press. So and you know, I found that, you know, when I was looking online, most of the time when you're looking for the materials, it just kind of all comes together. You know, I think you can buy the plant press separately, and then, you know, you can kind of find your own pieces of cardboard and order the blotting paper separately. But I think it's fairly typical for it all to come together. And then the main thing that you do have to get for yourself is, you know, newspaper. And what I do is I just cut it to like, you know, the size that the herbarium card is going to be. Because if you use newsprint that's a little bit bigger, you can see like the plant press is a little bit bigger, and you know, so you could press plants that are a little bit bigger, but really, you know, if you're trying to put it on an herbarium card, you don't want to risk, you know, arranging and, you know, putting together a specimen, and then you get it to the card and find that it doesn't fit. So you have to cut the newsprint to the right size. All right, so let's see. Okay, so let me show you how this works. All right, so what I do, you know, especially if you're like me and you don't have a whole lot of like a huge workspace, at the botanical garden they have a huge workspace, you know, big tables, and it's wonderful. But for me, when I'm just doing this by myself, it's easier to just, you know, this is like one side of the plant press, so I put that down first. And the press comes with, or at least mine did, you know, in the kit, with these pieces of cardboard. So the main thing with the pieces of cardboard is you want to make sure that it's corrugated cardboard, because the way that this works, it's kind of like a chimney, you know, it's the corrugation is what allows the air to kind of circulate around and kind of draw the moisture out of the plants. So just kind of regular flat cardboard wouldn't work as well. I mean, you could use it, but then you'd have to like keep changing the blotting paper, and it would be very time consuming. So having corrugated cardboard is really important. And then you would put down a piece of blotting paper on top of that. And then the next step is your piece of newsprint. And you adjust, and you see how it's cut, and it's, you know, folded in half. You open it up. It is that, you know, 11.5 by 16.5 size, so that it's going to fit, you know, that your specimen is going to fit on the herbarium card. Okay, so let's see. Let's pick something pretty, shall we? So this is always kind of the fun part, where you're just kind of like looking for something that's really representative of the plant. let's try this. So I have to thank my neighbor, Jen Granick, who was outside in her garden today just before the storm came through, cutting back plants and stuff. And she very kindly gave me these Queen Anne's lace and the Coreopsis and Rudbeckia. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do, of course, is to say, okay, this doesn't exactly fit, you know. So your options, you know, when you're trying to put together a sample and show all of the scientific features of the plant, is to cut it. So you could cut it and, you know, mount it so that you have two pieces. Another way that it's done is to kind of fold it into an N shape, which I don't usually like to do, but I've seen it done very elegantly, to have the stem folded into an N shape and laid across like that. Okay, so let me see my notes. So, so the first thing with pressing the plant is, you know, of course, you have to make sure that it fits. What I'm going to do is just do these two pieces separately. So we'll have this smaller piece here, and then I think I'll just leave off this part. And then, of course, remember, this is going to be flat as flat can be. And so now you have to kind of look at, well, you know, this is not flat. This has a lot of volume to it. How are we going to kind of get it to represent, you know, in 2D, what, you know, the beauty of what it is in 3D? So the instructions are really to start from the bottom of the plant and to work your way up. So what you would do is you would start here, and you would just start to kind of press with your fingers and press the elements in the direction that they are growing. So in this case, you kind of want it to kind of show the shape in which it has grown. Other important rules are that the stem always goes on top, so you don't ever cross the branches over the stems. So you kind of want to break the plant up just a little bit so that things aren't trying to cross over when you close up the press. And then when you kind of come up here, so you see how it has kind of a shape towards the side. So if you wanted to kind of preserve the way that it looks this way, then you would just kind of flatten it like that, you know, kind of without opening it forward. Okay, this one, however, we could actually open up and lay it out flat. And one of the things that really kind of alarmed me when I was in the classroom with the instructors, Daniel Atha pointed out, well, you know, a taxonomist would want to go in and count every one of those little, you know, radial spokes, you know, the umbels, or, you know, these sort of smaller umbels in the larger one. So you really kind of have to spread them out. Hopefully you guys can see okay. There's enough light. I don't want it to be too bright. Okay.
I can see, we can see very well.
You can see it? Okay, good. So, you know, it's part of it is just kind of your own eye for how you want it to be preserved. Okay. And of course, you really kind of want to um, leave the stem exposed too, so that nothing is lying across the stem. All right. So, and then let me just show you also, um, oops, okay. So one of the other things that you have to think about with pressing plants is showing the underside of the flower or the leaves. So then you would just kind of do the same with another flower like this, and you would just put it down upside down. And you can kind of think, well, you could dry them all right side up, and then when you want to mount it, you could kind of flip it upside down. But it doesn't always work that way, because you want to be intentional about how you're pressing it, because remember, you want the stem to be on top and not underneath. All right. So you get the sense. So here you can really kind of see the structure underneath the flower too. All right. So then what you would do is you close it, kind of trying to make sure that everything stays the way that you want it. All right. And then you would put another piece of cardboard on top of that. And then you're ready to do another one. So another piece of, so it's really just kind of like a plant cardboard blotting paper sandwich. So a piece of blotting paper, you would put down another piece of newsprint and be ready. So if you were really, a plant scientist and you were out in the field collecting plants and making notes about the plants for proper labeling, you would very scientifically carry a notebook with you, and you would be numbering all of these plants. So one of the things that Daniel Atha explained to us in the class is kind of the keeping of the notebook is, kind of over your whole career as a plant scientist. So, you would just the numbers would just keep going up and up and up. So in a career, you would, get up to just hundreds, thousands, and every number would be, when you collect the specimen and you write down your description in your notebook, you would write the number here on the piece of newspaper. So that way, when you're kind of creating the herbarium specimen on the card and everything, you would have the number on the label, and then you would be able to go back to your field notes, your original notes in your notebook, to really see and check, all of those details. All right. So this is a nice complicated one too, because the flowers, you can see the flowers, again, you could have them kind of open and forward like this, so that you can really kind of see the petal structure. But then you could also kind of artfully do them kind of sideways. But again, you really want it to be spread out, starting from the bottom and spreading out the plant. You want as little overlap as possible. Let's see. So it's kind of tricky when you're trying to close, close the press over it, because, these very springy things want to go back to what they were doing. I think I'm maybe not as vicious as I should be with the plants, but All right. But I think what I'll do is I'll have these two kind of open, just kind of from my own artistic um, sense of it. And then I would leave these kind of to be a little more kind of closed and in profile. All right. So one of the things also to remember with pressing plants is once you press it, you can't really rearrange it. So this is kind of the final, you know, this is their final shape. So once you press them, that is their destiny. All right. As you're assembling the plant press, you want all of the newspapers to open to the same side. That way, when you put it in, you know, at the garden, they have dryers that they use, and so you would put it into the dryer so that I believe it's so that all of the papers open upwards. So that way, the air as it circulates, it's just more efficient, you know, to get all of the moisture out of the plants. Um, and that's really the most important thing is you want all of the water off. I find it takes only about a day or two for this to work. The way that I set this up is just with a little personal heating fan. I just set it up kind of on a shelf and you know, just let it run like that, and it's really pretty quick. But there are certain specimens that really do take a little bit longer, like you know, anything that's kind of thicker and leathery. You know, sometimes like tropical plants can be like that. Those might take even a week to get, you know, for them to really release all of the moisture. Maybe we'll do one more just so I can show you. So this one, Mother Nature was very kind and knocked down a lot of leaves and branches today. So I have a bit of the tulip tree in my yard. So you're wondering, okay, that looks really thick and difficult. You know, how on earth would you press something like that? And I would say very carefully. And I just want to show you like one of these techniques that we use for pressing something that's really thick. So the first thing you do, you know, when you have something that's this, you know, unruly, is you kind of want to look at it and say, okay, so which things can I cut off and, you know, not kind of lose the beauty and the structure of the thing. When you do cut pieces off of a specimen, you want to leave just a little bit of it so that you know, if someone's looking at it, you know, for science, they can see, oh, there were leaves that came off of there, you know, so that they can really imagine what the original looked like before it was dried. So here, like I would just take off some of these. And then I would probably take off this one. And you know, again, you really want the most representative bits of it to remain. So anything that's like a little bit damaged or a little bit not, you know, kind of malformed, you probably want to take off. So here, you know, and it's rather big, so we could even take these off. All right. So it would be something like this, you know, and I think, you know, someone who's an expert at arranging these kinds of things would probably take off even more of the leaves to arrange it properly. I tend to be a little bit too nice here. So, but again, you want to show the underside of the leaf. So let me see if you can see. So I would have the underside of the leaf at least on a couple of them. And yeah, see, this one's a little bit damaged, so I could even take this one off. And just really try to spread it out as much as you can. So the trick with these, you know, these specimens that kind of stick up like this is you would add padding to the pressing. So you would take, you know, extra pieces of newspaper and you would fold them, you know, into half, you know, even more. And you would place them inside like this. So you'd place them alongside the thicker elements so that, because you want all of the leaves to be pressed flat, and these, you know, these cones in the middle would prevent that. So it's, you know, something like this would take a lot of padding around it, but that is how it gets done. And you would, you know, you just want to make sure that it's all sort of, see this, I could probably even fold it one more time. Let's see. And, you know, in the classroom, it was really, you know, there are a lot of people in the class who work at the garden. So I felt like a lot of them had seen this sort of work done already. And so, you know, I felt very impressed with kind of the artful way in which even, you know, people would kind of put the padding around, you know, the plant there. Okay, so I think that's going to cover most of the leaves. So, you know, you'd probably put even more padding on here, but I'm going to run out of newspaper. Okay. So then again, you do the same thing. You kind of close it up. All right. So another rule of thumb with putting together your plant press is to alternate the direction of the stems. So you see, I didn't actually do that while I was doing this because I wanted to kind of keep things a little bit, well, I don't know, straight in the way that I was demonstrating, but you would kind of go to the other side of the press and have the stem running this way as well. So you would kind of, you know, you'd have one stem running this way, the next one would run this way, the next one would run this way. That way you don't have a lopsided press when you close it up, you know, with all of the heavy stems on this side and all of the light stuff on this side. So I think this is going to even out okay. All right. So then another piece of cardboard on top. All right. And then this is the fun part where you take the other board of the press and place it on top. And, you know, you can imagine the scientists who go into the field and really, you know, pick up, you know, big, thick things that, you know, need a lot of pressing. you know, Daniel Atha like showed us, you know, you put the plant press on the floor, you know, and you stand on it and you pull the straps tight. You know, that's how he taught us. And I'm just, you know, that's a little much, but I do actually put the plant press on the floor, you know, to really get a good tight closure on it. So usually what I'll do is I'll just put it on the floor and then put my knee in the middle of it and pull it tight like that. So you get the idea. I'm not going to do that right now. Okay. So that's the plant pressing part. And then again, I would just leave that, you know, next to my little personal fan for like, usually I'll leave it for a good 2 days before I open it, just, you know, to make sure that it's all dry. Okay. So let me talk just a little bit about the labels. You know, the things that you really want to write down, you know, with doing this kind of thing, if you're going to make a label, is, you know, all of the things that are not going to be preserved when you press the plant. So, you know, you can kind of see behind me, you know, they're flat, so you can't see all of the structure. So those are the kinds of things you want to write down, you know, kind of the 3D structure of the plant, but also the color. You know, the color is, you know, it's going to change with pressing and drying. So the color of the leaves, both sides. So you want the front side of the leaf and the back side of the leaf if they're different colors. The colors of the stems, the colors of the flowers themselves, because those will change or fade with the drying. You also want to note down if there's any scent. So if it has a fragrance, if when you cut the stem, it has a particular smell, you know, that sort of thing. Also, if the leaves or any part of the plant has a kind of texture, like if the leaves are hairy, that can kind of get lost in the drying process. So so those are the kinds of things that go on the label. You don't have to write down for the label things that are like perfectly obvious about the plant, you know, like how many petals the flowers have, or, you know, things like that, because it's right there in front of you, right? But, you know, I'm not an expert on these things, but I was recommended by the teachers this really excellent book of, you know, plant identification terminology glossary. And it just, you know, it was just really helpful for like figuring out, okay, so that's an umbel, cool, you know. So and poets love, you know, words like that. So that was one of the things that I loved about learning how to label plants, with some of the wonderful words that are involved. Okay, so I think that's everything about labeling and about pressing. Okay, so let me show you how to do the gluing. So I have a few specimens that I dried already, just to show you how to do the gluing. All right. So I have a couple of Queen Anne's lace and some other things. Here we are. All right, let me just move this off to the side. Okay. And so, you know, the herbarium cards that I bought were unfortunately not the right thickness. So I noted in the materials and equipment list the exact caliper size, so that you won't make the same mistake and get paper that's way too thin. The important thing to know is that you want to get the cotton rag paper. That's one of the things that they really impressed upon us at the New York Botanical Garden. class that cotton is really the best material for these archival projects because it's just not going to affect the specimens and nothing's going to happen to it. So
Hey, Anu?
yeah.
I think you need to like tilt the camera down a little bit just to see the tape.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Okay. All right. I would have figured that out. But probably after I'd started gluing things. All right. So can you see okay now?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
perfect. Okay, so let's see, we need another piece of newspaper. Let's see. All right, so you'll find the newspaper is really, really helpful for all of these kinds of projects. It's like, okay, so according to Shiranza, there are two methods for the gluing. The first is the, what did she call it? It's basically, doing kind of what fancy bakers do across the top of, beautiful cakes, that kind of wave pattern with the glue, so that you get a nice even coating of glue all across the plant. And then you kind of flip it over onto the paper. The other method is called the butter knife method, which, kind of sounds a little bit violent, but it's not. It's really, the method that you would use for something with very, very delicate leaves like a fern or something like that, where you wouldn't want to move it after the glue was on it, because even applying glue to it might damage it. So these are pretty tough, and we can probably deal with them being glued and then moved. So I'll show you that first. And I have to admit, I'm not, the neatest gluer, but and it's always good to have a towel or a paper towel or something nearby so that you can wipe up the glue as well. So let's see. Oops. All right, so I'm ready. Again, it's always good to kind of know where you're going to place the flower on the page and then just kind of quickly move it there. So something like that. And then you would pick it up rather gently and then place it the way that you want it on the page, like that. And the way that we were kind of shown to do this is, it's really best to have a very, it's like a cotton or muslin cloth to do this sort of delicate tamping down. But, paper towel works okay. It's just Queen Anne's lace and for yourself. And that's that. So it's really a very small amount of glue that you're applying. If you're worried about certain areas of it, which I sometimes am, I will still use the butter knife method and try to get under there. So let me show you just kind of how to do that too. So I would take just a little bit of the glue on the knife and kind of go under the specimen like this. And then you would do the same thing. You would use the cloth to kind of push it down slightly like that. So like any areas that you're worried about. Okay, so that's good. And then what you would do is you would put a piece of wax paper on top of that. Like so. And then, of course, I couldn't find for the demonstration the plumber's washers that I used to put on top, but plumber's washers are what they use at the garden to kind of keep the plant flat and pressed down. I've used stones, like just like small flat stones all along the plant to keep it down like that too. But I think even coins would work, you know, for a small project like this. So I'm just putting it on one of the pieces of cardboard just so that it stays nice and flat. And then you would just set it aside to dry. And PVC glue, it dries pretty fast. I think the reason that they ask, you know, or that they use PVA glue is because it is a little bit flexible, and it's also archival, so it's not going to damage the plants at all. I don't think I need to show you any more of the gluing. That's good. I got to show you both of the techniques. And then let me show you the sewing. I don't know, I think the sewing was maybe the most surprising thing about learning to do this. Somehow it didn't really occur to me that there would be that step, that we would have to do a little bit of sewing to secure the plant to the card. But here's one that I did this spring from my dogwood tree outside, and you know, I just kind of like gave it a pretty edge and just glued it, no label, just for fun. But I didn't sew the stem. And so, you know, the way that, you know, Sharonza explained it, you really only need, for a sample like this, just one stitch, and it goes about a 1/2 inch from the bottom of the stem. So you don't want to have more than one, because then when you're moving the card, if it's stitched in more than one place, it actually has a higher risk of falling off of the card and getting damaged. So you really just want that little piece right there. And it's really the simplest thing. You just, you know, you have a needle and thread. Let's grab a good needle here. And you should use the cotton bookbinder's thread. This is the wrong thread. This is actually linen, but so you want to tie a knot at the bottom of that. So you've just kind of doubled up the thread on the needle, and then just an overhand knot at the bottom. And so what you want to do is bring the needle through from the underside, so kind of close, really close to the stem, and just a 1/2 inch up from the bottom. And you don't want to like pull all of the thread through right away. You just kind of want to pull a little bit through, because if you pull the whole thread through and it's kind of like dangling around, it could damage some of the plants. So you just want to pull through a little bit, you know, just enough to kind of put your needle back in, right? So then you'll put it back in to the back. And then you just kind of pull it, you know, carefully so that it's tight. So there, it's tight to the card. So let's see, can you see that? So you have it like this, and then what you want to do is just knot it again so that it's close to the card and it's not going to come loose. And then you can just trim it, you know, not too short, but short enough, you know. And then, you know, just kind of watching Sharonza do this was like amazing because she was so fast. But then you just put another knot and then you're ready to sew the next sample. But then, you know, what they do at the garden is they have, this is just bookbinder's tape. It's, I guess this is white and like a 1 inch thick. You just take a little bit, like a little square of it. And then you would just tape over the ends. So that way the threads don't catch, you know, so you imagine if you have a stack of these herbarium specimens and you're, you know, moving them around, it's, you know, you don't want the threads to catch and damage other specimens. So there's that. You can see it's like nicely sewn. It's not going to come off. And that's it. And then I think I wanted to show you how to fold the packet that goes. Let's see if I have that little piece of paper. Okay, I think I've misplaced the little piece of paper, but let me show you again. So the last step, you know, is to put on the little packet for any pieces of the sample that fall off. So it's just a 5.5 by, or I think it's a 5 by 4 piece of paper. You know, it's just almost like a square or like a rectangle. And what you do is you fold it into, you know, like thirds like this. You want to fold it backwards. And then what you do is you just put a line of glue on the back of it, just in the center, and then glue it on. And you can put the packet pretty much anywhere on the card. It, you know, I've seen it, you know, different places. It just depends, I guess, on how, like kind of the space that your specimen is taking up on the card, or just artfully where you want to put it. Usually the label is placed right down here like that. So you can put the packet kind of, you know, down next to it or just up this way. And I think that's it. Are there any questions? Does anybody have questions about any of that? I think, Rosemary, you'll have to tell me if there are questions.
Okay. I'm just unmuting people if they'd like to be unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Let's see what's in the Q&A. Answered.
I'm just like closing up my glue so it doesn't dry up on me. Like,
if anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself if you want to ask aloud, or you could type it.
Do you ever add any color to this, or is always just the natural plant?
It's always just the natural plant for me. I'm not sure if people add color. I actually haven't seen that. Mm-hmm. But I have noticed that the things that I've pressed, they tend to change color, you know, mm-hmm. like month to month, and especially if you're leaving them like I have, you know, these samples, they're exposed to, you know, the UV light, and the air and the humidity. So that does affect the color.
Asking because I've done pressing. Someone also gave a demonstration about using the petals, the dye on the petals, and then pressing it in. And
oh, wow.
That wasn't too satisfying because it was just too soft. And what people wound up and I wound up doing was adding a little linear, to define it. But this is very natural. This is,
Yeah. Yeah. It's really just the plant. It's the plant itself, really unembellished. And, you think of it, it's really, they have specimens at the New York Botanical Garden from, Captain Cook's cruise, 200 years or whatever. It's really something. They have really, really old specimens,
Do
moss.
you write your poetry near the plant, or that's not part of it? Do you use it?
It's funny. I really wanted to, the original project that I had in mind was to use there was a translation that I was doing, and these particular poems were very specific about the plants. So the plant would match the mood of the poem. So my idea was to go and, do some artful pressings of these plants to present with the translations. But I find that, I think the types of plants that I choose to press are the ones that do inspire my poetry. Yeah. Like, the dogwood tree appears in the poem, and then all of a sudden I say, okay, let's go get some. And, I think the poetry wakes me up to.
Would it disturb you to put the poetry among the plants?
Oh, say that again?
Would it disturb you to put the poetry among the plant leaves? And I'm thinking of it as, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
yeah.
You could use the spaces, like doing a haiku almost. You could use the spaces and you don't do that. You write the poem on the paper with the plants, or I see.
I've thought about that. I have one of my mentors, Jody Gladding. She did a poetry collection in which she used natural materials, and she wrote the poems on the natural materials. And so, they were somewhat ephemeral, but some of them were preserved, like pieces of bark especially could be kept. And, so I've considered it. Yeah. Like, kind of putting the poem, especially with, this sort of thing, these very small little cards that I've made, Yeah. Yeah. So it's
paper is the fact that the paper is cut out,
Yeah. Yeah. So, the most I've done so far is, write little notes to friends, and they're a little bit poetic, but it's not really an art project that I've done yet. So, but I like the idea.
Sounds like you could make a book. You probably already thought about this. Plants on one side, poem on the other. That would be really
and
cool.
That's really what I had in mind for the translation. So I hope that I'll still be able to do it. It requires some travel, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I think that would be a fun project, for any poet to have the plant on the one side and the poem on the other. One thing that my daughter likes to do is she'll take different elements of the plants, we'll press several plants, and then she'll take, a leaf from this and a flower from this, and she'll make these scenes, so it's very interesting, the things that you can do. You don't have to be entirely, just true to the plant, the way that Shiranza says. It's, you can be a little bit creative with pulling petals apart and gluing them and doing some things.
Yeah, you could make a beautiful collage.
Yeah,
instead of different
absolutely.
pieces of the plants, or mosaic almost of things. That would put you.
Yeah.
when you go out and about, are you always collecting stuff now? Do you see things and you're like, oh, I need that? Or
I do that from time to time, with some of the wildflowers that I see when I'm hiking or something. But for the most part, yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I haven't really become like a plant collector. I think what would change that for me is if I took another course or a couple more courses at the New York Botanical Garden, and or another place that teaches that sort of botany. Then just the art of looking closely and recognizing different varieties, and then I think I would really start to collect. At the moment, I really just kind of like to look at the plants in life and just enjoy them there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I found that it's something that as I've gotten older, I've appreciated more and more and been more and more interested in botany and plants, and especially during the lockdown, it was one of the ways to feel alive is to go at least we could go for walks and just notice all the different, and luckily where we live, there's so many people who have these amazing gardens in front of their homes, and even the weeds.
I know, even the weeds.
It's extraordinary. I was noticing a weed that had pushed its way up through, 2 slabs of concrete and was just going for it.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's, I tend to collect the names. Like I don't, want to collect the plants themselves. It's more like I like to know what it's called. I like to know kind of the story of why it's called that. That's kind of been my my way in with plants. But just learning this last year, I think it's just kind of one step on, into that.
Oh, very beautiful.
They are very beautiful.
Thank you.
Just looking at like the ones you have on your wall, it just makes me feel beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
It's great to just keep making things.
It is. It really is. And, it's, the nice thing about this particular art project is that, yes, they do fade and they do start to dry and peel off, and, then you can take them down and go do another one.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Anu.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosemary, for inviting me to do this.
Oh, you're welcome. As soon as I saw I think it's your Facebook post, I said, oh, I got to, I was immediately drawn to it, and I knew other people would be too.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is being recorded, and you'll be able to access it at the, nyacklibrary.org. Probably I'll try to get it up tomorrow morning. So you can tell your friends if anyone else is interested. And if you'd like any more information, like more specific links to websites, or just, I'm happy to provide that information as well, and supplies and things like that. And before I forget, because I generally do, I'm going to start the little poll. It's only 6 questions. If you wouldn't mind just answering it for me, that would be great. But thank you, Anu. It's always great to see you. And
yeah, great. Thanks, Rosemary. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
And thanks, everyone. Just enjoy the plants. It's really,
And I hope everyone has power and that they came through the storm okay. I guess the 4 people here, we all have power, obviously, but.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody stay safe and well.
Thank you.